Hello and welcome to My Mom's Basement presented by Barstool Sports and 3Chi. I am your host, Robbie Fox, and today we are breaking down AEW All Out with the number one journalist in wrestling. It's Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful.com and Fightful Select, of course. Sean, we've been trying to do this podcast for a little bit. We've had some internet connection issues. Finally, I can ask you this question. This was a card built around CM Punk's return to the ring, his return against Darby Allin. And you were the one who broke that story on Fightful Select. CM Punk is actually coming back. Take me back to the moment where you first heard rumblings that this guy might be joining AEW.
Well, I was on a Zoom call with this guy, and it kept just repeatedly cutting out. And I was like, "You're telling me what? You're telling me what?" Robbie's heard the first minute of this story a couple times, but I've got some connections within the Chicago sports world, not just the Chicago sports world, just the sports world, in addition to wrestling, because a lot of these people want to know about wrestling, and they're like, well, just ask the guy who talks about wrestling. And there's this one person in particular in Chicago, and he'll like always troll and be like, bro, did you hear Hogan's coming back and winning the title, bro? And I'm like, very funny. And he did that. I can't remember what it was, but then he said, oh, by the way, CM Punk's coming to AEW. And my immediate thought was, fuck right off. Like, just shut up. No, he's not. And he's like, no, but really. And I was like, whatever. And I completely dismissed it for like 2 or 3 days. And then I remember back to a Q&A that I went to in Lexington at a Comic-Con a couple years ago. And it was Christian and Edge, two of my favorites of all time. And there was a guy, he didn't get laughed out of the room, but he got snickered at an awful lot because he asked Christian, who had been retired for 5 years, and Edge, who had been retired for 8, oh, are you ever going to wrestle again and come back to and do it for AEW? And a lot of people like snickered at him. And I thought back to that, and I'm like, what are those two guys doing right now? And I was like, I need to follow up on this. Even if it's wrong, I need to follow up on it. It was just so far-fetched.
Yeah.
That I was like, why would I? You know, he's had no interest in wrestling, it seems like, for a while. And I started to ask people, and it was funny because the people that I would ask would think that this was kept a lot quieter than it actually was. But CM Punk's people very clearly were out there and we're talking about it, because how else am I going to get it from the Chicago area besides that? Like, so AEW is usually very good at keeping leaks quiet, and none of the wrestlers had been told explicitly, yes, he's coming in, until the day he showed up. Everybody just knew. And I was talking to a lot of people in AEW, and they're like, well, we know that they've talked, but we don't know how serious it is. Then I start hearing from other media members around Slammiversary weekend. I was in Nashville for Impact, and the pieces started to fall together. And I was like, okay, they were talking then, they traveled then, this meeting happened then. And like with any big story, like I'll reach out to top people in WWE, in ROH, and Impact. I reached out about it, and I was very careful how I worded it, because I know that other people had reached out to AEW and said, heard you signed CM Punk. And it was easy for them to say, no, we didn't, because they hadn't. So I was very careful how I worded it. But
he signed the contract right before he walked out, right? On Dynamite?
Exactly. Mark
Or on Rampage, rather? Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Raimondi had that story where his lawyer hit him up and was like, hey, you should probably sign this deal before you go out there. But I had said, I heard you all are in talks, and I couldn't get anything on the record, but I had talked to so many people there that had confirmed it, and there was fire where there was smoke. But I was terrified it was going to be like a Helwani Brock Lesnar situation. I was afraid I was going to get blackballed. And fortunately, I was assured we don't do business that way regardless. But I don't think that either side really wanted it out there. But I think by the night that it happened, they were like, well, this is probably best for everybody that it did kind of get out there, because surprises can still happen in wrestling, even when people know
the
what's
way
going
they
on.
handled that was perfect. And I even saw you say, if I didn't break that story, it was probably going to come out a few days later. It seemed like it was starting to slip, right?
It was going to come out probably within an hour or two. So I had the story slated. I had decided on a Sunday I was going to do the story. I reached out to AEW on the Monday after. So it would be the Monday after Impact Slammiversary. I had decided I would drop it on a Wednesday. Wednesday's a really good news day, because especially for AEW stuff. So I was like, I was going to drop it on a Wednesday. And when you're sitting on a story like that, oh my God, Jesus, man. Like you're worried somebody else is going to break it. And I had it set for noon Eastern on a Wednesday. And at about 11:48, I'm getting like 3 or 4 media members. Hey, have you heard this? Have you heard this? Have you heard this? And I'm like, yeah, I have. And I was like,
publish.
Let's hit publish on this. And I published it at like 11:53.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, I got to get this out. And I was confident enough in it that, I mean, I knew it was happening, obviously, but yeah, I was like, oh crap. And it was the biggest story that I've ever published. And it changed not just my life, but our site and our staff and all that stuff. It has ramifications for everybody.
Yeah, and the way that AEW handled it afterwards, like teasing it, kind of letting everyone in on it, but not, it was perfect. And by the time he debuted, it reminded me of like when Jericho debuted on Raw and that people had signs in the crowd already. And like people in the documentaries nowadays go, how did they know? And it's like, well, because it got out like a few weeks earlier. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like all the signs in the crowd, the chanting, it made it all better.
Yeah, and he did a loser leaves town match on a house show and everybody knew about it. So it's like they knew it was coming. But with the CM Punk thing, it still was one of those things, even though I knew all this stuff I was reporting was true. It's still CM Punk, and we have seen his demeanor a lot. And we know that until he pops up there, who's to say he might just not be like, oh, you all let this get out, even though it wasn't AEW that let it get out. I'm just going to go home.
You know what's so funny is I had heard, I think in December, that Punk was like thinking about coming back. And in my mind, I kind of did the same thing as you. I dismissed it. And I was like, I don't think that's true. And in my mind, I was like, this is Royal Rumble every year. We're getting close to the Rumble. Ridiculous rumors will start. Oh, Punk was in an airport. And I didn't think about it again until your story came out. And I believed your story immediately because I was like, oh, wait a minute.
And they had been talking that entire time. They had been talking, like Tony Khan said, they had been talking for like a year and a half, but they were never going to do it in front of no fans, which I think was good. Yeah. And CM Punk even said, the way that AEW's roster handled the Brodie Lee situation, keeping that illness private, showed him that it was worth going to. And I can tell you that is 100% true. I remember after the announcement of the unfortunate passing of Brodie, there were like 6 or 7 AEW wrestlers that messaged me and they said, what did you know? And I was like, I didn't know anything. Like I would have kept it private anyway, because that isn't, I mean, you could argue that no story is anybody else's business, but to me, I get to decide where I draw the line. That's where I draw the line. But I hadn't heard anything. And I had asked about Brodie numerous times to find out where he had been. So, I mean, that gave me a lot of respect to them too, because they don't owe me info. Like nobody owes me information. I owe my readers information. And that's one of those things. I'm very glad they did keep it close to the vest, because they showed a lot of respect to that family and their wishes.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I was lucky enough to be backstage at a Dynamite taping, or not even taping. It was live a couple months ago. I think it was in April. And the way I saw everyone treat Brodie Jr. backstage was just so heartwarming. Like there's such a genuine little brother dynamic between him and every single person on the roster. So that's like, it was so amazing to see it up close and personal. But let's talk about All Out. You were there. It looked like an amazing weekend in Chicago. And I kind of want to start there. What was the vibe like? You've been to WrestleManias, I know, and stuff like that. Did it have a WrestleMania weekend feel?
So I've actually never been to a WrestleMania.
Wait, what?
I've never been to a WrestleMania.
Have you gone to a city, like the city where WrestleMania is? What?
No. My trips. So I was actually scheduled to wrestle a match.
Why do I have Mandela effect?
I know. Well, here? I was finally going to start to travel. I started to travel for this job really Double or Nothing weekend 2019, because media opportunities opened up.
Yep.
And when AEW started to provide media opportunities that they really don't provide anymore with talent interviews, WWE started to do it and other companies started to do it. So I didn't go in 2019 because I wasn't going to be invited to the media stuff. And all due respect, I can do more work from my desk than I can do there. In 2020, I was going to have media opportunities. I was booked to wrestle in a freaking match at a brewery at one point, but the pandemic hit. And then 2021, there weren't the media opportunities. So I just didn't go. So I've never been. Next year will be my first.
Dude, that stuns me. Stunned.
No, it surprises a lot of people. I've been to a Rumble, SummerSlam. I've been to multiple SummerSlams because they do a lot of media there. But I can tell you, the vibe there is so unanimously positive. And I mean, at the risk of people saying, "Oh, you're an AEW shill," I don't really care. I don't care if you think I'm a journalist. I don't care what you think. I report news. It's accurate. There you go. Subscribe.
I know,
Fight
dude.
Select.
I see the masses that you have to deal with
Eh.
on Twitter sometimes, and I'm like, listen, you have to deal with them because you're number one. Like, always remember that you're number one. That's why they're coming at you.
Positive outweighs the negative, and that's kind of the point I'm getting at. Like, there were so many cool people that I got to meet this weekend, and at an AEW show, it's so much different than anything else. Like, at some other shows, it's a sit on your hands and impress me crowd. People at AEW want everything to succeed. Like, I'm at home, I might not think the Bunny and Ty Conti is like the hottest feud going on, but there, the audience wants it to succeed. They want it to get over. And it's one of those things where in WWE, if MJF were there, he might get cheered because he'd be the most entertaining thing on the show because they can't book baby faces. In AEW, they want MJF to continue being that piece of shit because it's entertaining, so they boo him.
That's a great way to put it.
And I mean, it's not always like that. Britt Baker gets a lot of cheers, but they haven't changed how she acts. So like the environment there is really, really positive and really exciting. And it's just very positive. Now, it was also in Las Vegas as well for SummerSlam. So I'm not trying to crap on WWE or anything like that.
I was there as well. It was fucking hot in Las Vegas, dude.
Yeah, it was. It was. But I mean, I'm in Kentucky and there's so much humidity. So to me, I'm like, oh, it feels like it's 78 degrees in Kentucky where we walk through soup every day. But like, if you listen to Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, they're like, oh, we loved working for WWE. We don't have anything bad to say. It's just listen to that crowd. That's why we're here. So I mean, if that doesn't, that's the best example I can provide. It's
almost a bigger
tool.
statement than people saying like I hated the WWE, I hated everything about it, because like I think someone did a Twitter thread about it today, and they said the WWE could look at that and be like, they were angry, they were this, that, and the next thing. And it's like when WWE looks at a Bryan Danielson and says he main evented WrestleMania this year, he was happy, he had creative opportunities, we were going to let him work elsewhere, and he's still like, not for me.
Adam Cole's one of the best booked people of the past 4 years. Always in important storylines, always gets a lot of TV time, gets mic time, gets freedom, pushed well.
They apparently promised him stuff, right? They took him up to the main roster and were like, hey, we'll do angles like this for you and whatnot. Do you think he was seriously considering staying?
Yeah, I do. I think there was a part, because I mean, I had always heard, I mean, we broke a ton of the Adam Cole news. Like, we were on that beat. I was talking to people from WWE weekly about him, and they had nothing but good things to say about him. Usually you'll get like a little snide remark about somebody who's on their way out. Not Adam Cole. They were like, man, he didn't have to re-sign with us. He could have shown up on Dynamite 4 days later, because they walked up to him and they're like, hey, we know that your contract's supposed to be up in December, but it's actually up in 3 days. And by the way, Pete Dunne's is too. Will you all please sign extensions to stay through August? And he was like, yeah, of course I will, which is, man.
Very, very, very nice of him. Yeah.
Very nice of him. And he said it was a surprise to him too. But that was the day I tweeted a picture of the Radicals, and people were like, what's this about? That's what it was about. That's what it was about. That and some other stuff. But he had it good in WWE.
Yeah.
But I know this has been a long-winded answer. The audience, the vibe that you just asked me about, is a recruiting tool for AEW.
Yeah, it is.
And you can't replicate that unless you just put on a good show. It got Daniel Bryan and Adam Cole to be like, hey, we're going to leave this show, go to AEW.
And in a way, CM Punk to be like, I want to be a part of that. It's part of that punk rock environment that he talks about. You go to a punk rock show, and the crowd's going to cheer for the indie bands that are the openers that they don't know because they're at the punk rock show. And punk rock is our little thing, and we want it to succeed. Yes. And that's all part of it. Let's open up the show discussion with the buy-in. I saw someone on Twitter call it a final day of Bola match, and that's exactly what it was. It was perfect. It was Chuck, Orange Cassidy, is Jurassic Express versus the Hardy Family Office. I don't have everyone written down. I believe that was the match, right?
Yeah, Private Party, TH2, and Jack Evans, and the Butcher popped up at the end. I had seen him.
The Butcher's back.
Yeah, I'd seen him around Chicago. I put the news on FightfulSelect.com, and apparently he had been dealing with a really bad thumb issue that he had in his last match. And when they were out there, I thought to myself, why isn't he just ringside? And then he came back, and that's why. But this is like, okay, we want to give people an excuse to listen to Orange Cassidy's music, get a bunch of people on the show. All these people are entertaining workers. Wheeler Yuta was the belle of the ball earlier this year. I mean, when he didn't get signed, I had people in WWE saying, yeah, I think our hiring methods are changing because we don't know why he didn't get signed. if that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is, but this is how you get a bunch of people's music played and get a good 10-minute match on a show.
You get the good pop at the end with the group hug. That was great.
Yep.
Every time they do the Rainmaker zoom out, I laugh. I don't care how many times it happens. It will get me every single time. Good way to get the show started, but the way they got the actual show started was even better. Miro versus Eddie Kingston. This could have been the best match of both of their careers. I saw people saying it. It went like 13 minutes. It wasn't the greatest technical masterpiece of all time, but it was great professional wrestling. All this stuff with Bryce, all this stuff with the ref, I loved. The crowd, I mean, you guys treated Bryce like public enemy number one in Chicago.
So, man, this Miro is, as a wise man once said, he is who we thought he was. This is the guy we always knew he could be. Like that part charming, part horrifying type of thing. And I know a lot of people had a problem with the video game stuff and Kip Sabian. I didn't. I mean, besides the feud lasting so long with Best Friends, I think that set the stage. You had to show the softer, friendly side of Miro before you realized that he could also rip your spine out through your asshole. And Eddie Kingston can talk his way into any situation. Like, redeem these nuts.
These nuts was so good. It was trending on Twitter, like the trending with wrestling. Redeem these nuts. Just so funny.
He didn't sell hundreds of shirts that night, and they had them ready to go. Like,
crowd was chanting it.
Yes. So it was super over. Eddie Kingston is always going to be over. Miro is exactly who we knew he could be, and that's awesome because Tony Khan is very particular. He cuts off people and says, this is not a mid-card championship. This is a top championship. Miro has never lost in AEW. Man, it is really, really good stuff. I really enjoyed this. And just two personalities that people care about.
Yeah, and it was so like fluidly booked, the whole shenanigans with the ref and Bryce and taking the turnbuckle off and the low blow. Sometimes that gets convoluted and it gets the eye roll. Not at all for this. The crowd loved all of it. Great match to open the show too. I was confused as we were watching the buy-in, like what's gonna open the show? Is it gonna be the cage match so the Bucks can go back and produce? Is it gonna be this? Is it gonna be that? As soon as Eddie Kingston's music hit, I was like, oh no, that's the right call. That's the right call. They're gonna get the crowd excited. Up next, we got Moxley versus Kojima. This one was better than I thought it would be. And I wasn't like down on the match at all, but I was just like, oh yeah, that's a match on the card. And it wound up being like, oh shit, yeah, Moxley kind of works that Japanese style, maybe better than anyone on the AEW roster. At the end, we get fucking Suzuki.
Yes.
In AEW, which people said we should have known it was coming because he was in America and he had the prior history with Moxley. True, but like, who would put that together? That was such an awesome surprise. The crowd going wild for it. And if you don't know who he is, oh my God, you are going to be delighted on Wednesday when you watch this match because they had some good chemistry last year, and I think it's going to deliver here.
I like that John Moxley, like they went up to him and they're like, who do you want to feud with? And he's like, have you heard of Japan?
Yeah, because New Japan Pro Wrestling. You know, like, that company?
The whole thing. I don't want to say I was let down when they announced Kojima because they had been teasing like Tanahashi, obviously. Yeah. But this was good. You knew it was going to be good. And Suzuki coming out when he's the fourth biggest person that people are talking about coming to a show, that's unreal. And everybody's like, oh, they should spread these out. No.
Why? Like, this is like their biggest show of the year. Why would you spread it out?
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes you be able to go to Soldier Field or something like that next year or wherever, like a stadium, and be able to do a stadium show next year. This is a good match. Kojima won me over by liking bread so much on Twitter.
Yeah, that was I loved it. And the tweet afterwards, he said, thank you, Moxley, with the AEW lanyard and like just the one piece of bread.
Yes.
If you're not aware, Moxley apparently doesn't like bread.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what a weird thing.
Interesting. And I mean, I had tickets to AEW Cincy, and that's Moxley's homecoming. That's quite a week for that guy. But Suzuki popping up, it's like a no duh. Like, of course he will. But I hadn't heard anything about it. And people can say, oh, you should have seen it coming, but who would have thought, like, right here in this spot? So many people were worried about Ruby, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, that I think it almost went under the radar before this, and it created a very special moment.
And debuting him in front of this crowd, they all knew who he was. They all went crazy for him. They all sang the theme.
Yeah.
You run the risk of like not making him look like as big a star as he is if you debut him in front of Cincy. No offense. I don't know if they're going to know Suzuki as well as Chicago did. Fellas, the sport of business means demanding excellence from your craft and wardrobe. Your fits need to be versatile, blending timeless style and comfort so that you look as good as you feel. For that, there is Cuts Clothing. I wear Cuts Clothing constantly. Like I said, it's such versatile stuff. You could wear it to the bar. You could wear it to dinner. You could wear it to work. You could even wear it to the gym if you want. Kind of looks like Bryan Danielson, was wearing Cuts Clothing at AEW All Out. You know, he came out in the street clothes, but he could still wrestle in them. So he might have been wearing Cuts. I don't know if I could definitely sign him on as like someone that wears Cuts, but I'm just going to say a soft endorsement from Bryan Danielson. In 2016, Cuts founder Steve Borelli, who I've told you about before, set out to create clothes ready for every occasion the modern man faces. He started by reinventing the t-shirt. The end result, he got what GQ calls the only shirt worth wearing. That's right. If GQ is calling you the only shirt worth wearing, what are you doing? I mean, you got to get on this. This is like some James Bond. You know, he wears only what GQ says is worth wearing. So if you want to be James Bond, get some Cuts Clothing. Go to cutsclothing.com/basement right now and get yourself some clothes that are not just a lifestyle. It's not just clothing. It is office leisure apparel for the sport of business. Cutsclothing.com/basement. You'll get 15% off the only shirt worth wearing. That's an amazing deal. Go there now. Cutsclothing.com/basement for My Mom's Basement. Of course, you'll get 15% off. Great deal. Get yourself some Cuts Clothing. Up next, one of my favorite matches on the card. We got the AEW Women's Championship. Britt Baker defeated Chris Statlander. Orange yelling at Chris to get back in the ring. One of the best moments on this pay-per-view. One of the ones that I thought about as soon as the pay-per-view ended, thinking back to like, what a friggin' great show. Orange Cassidy taking off the glasses. Get back in the ring. What are you doing? Come on. That was great. I wrote down Chris is probably the best base in women's wrestling.
Yes.
When she had Britt, and Britt's like going around her like a monkey, basically, like climbing on every limb that she had. And I was like, she's going to fall. Oh, no, she's going to drop Britt. Oh, no, she's going to fall. And none of those things happened. She hit her move flawlessly. The Panama Sunrise, the perfect tease for what was to come. The crowd ate it up, too. That was perfect. Excalibur, I don't know if you've gotten the chance to watch the broadcast back. Excalibur called it perfectly with the Pittsburgh Sunrise right in that moment. Chris Statlander, future AEW Women's Champ, I say yes.
Oh, gotta be. And this is a part of the murderer's row for Britt Baker right now. There were some people that say, oh, she doesn't need the championship. I'm like, no, I completely disagree. When you've got a star that hot, put your biggest prize on them. That way everybody knows how important that prize is. I
agree.
Completely agree what you're saying about her being the best base, Chris Statlander. Like when these big dudes like Drew and Sheamus and Damian Priest and Lashley fight each other, I call them sirloin beef sons of bitches. That's what she is for them.
Yeah.
And Britt Baker is deceptively tall. She's 5'7". She's the same height as Rhea Ripley, as they claim Rhea Ripley is. I think she might be taller, but that's not easy with that tall body type to make it work. And she did. And the Pittsburgh Sunrise was perfect because it's one of those things that makes you think, well, surely he won't be on the show if she's doing that here. It's a tease for down the line. And then she teased it on Wednesday saying free agent signing. All of this was very clever and very smart. And that's one of the things I like about AEW is I can't predict exactly what they're going to do. Even if I'm told what's going to happen, I'm like, will it really happen? I thought this was great. And we'll talk more about the Battle Royal later, but it's the first in a long line of challengers for Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, who is very clearly their anchor, their megastar. I said Miro is who we thought he was. She is who AEW always thought she was when she was the first signing.
Yeah.
When you had Hangman Page coming out there at that presser and saying, I want to be AEW champion. And we were like, we know the drill. We know you're not one of the EVPs, so that you're his boy. They're putting you in that spot. And he worked and he worked and he worked and he got over. we knew Britt Baker was their poster girl, and so many people rejected her.
I was one of them beginning. I'll admit, when they went really hard with the dentistry stuff,
Yeah.
I was just like, Isaac Yankem 2.0, what is going on here? And
And
Britt won me over match by match, promo by promo. She's now one of my favorite people on the roster, one of my favorite people in wrestling.
She had to learn to work TV. She had never had a performance center. And I mean, they still subtly lean into the dentistry thing so much because of doctor and DMD. Yep. It's a redundant phrase, but I love it. And she has been a home run. And I like that this match is like 11 and a half minutes. Moxley and Kojima was like under 12 minutes. Miro and Eddie was like 13 and a half, I think. The opener was under 10 minutes. You don't have to do 20-minute marathons, and AEW has gotten so much better at that. Give me an action-packed 12 minutes, and I'm happy.
I have that written down. I have great match lengths throughout show, except for there were 2 matches that I felt went a bit too long. We'll get to those later in the show. The next match, I'm going to basically just throw it right to you, Sean, because being in that crowd, I just want to know what that was like for you. It was the Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks, a steel cage match. I wrote down instant classic, all-time entrance. I love the big feathered headdresses like Ray at WrestleMania 22. That's like one of my all-time favorite entrance attires. Everything about this match I thought was perfect. The thumbtack Travises from the Bucks, Phoenix jumping off the top of the cage like a lunatic. That cage, by the way, in person has to be taller than WWE steel cages, right?
It looks like it. I'm going to ask how tall it is, but they don't have like the pieces of the cage, like where there's a bit of a divider. Yep. So it looks way, way taller.
It looks huge. When he jumped off that cage, it looked like he was in the air for an hour.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So I'm not big on like rematches, constant rematches, running it back, but these two teams are very clearly like going to be almost like their Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, their Triple H, Shawn Michaels type of thing where you can go back to it often. And this is what they're doing. And it was perfect. That entrance where Mikey Ruckus is rapping them out, and Alex Abrahantes looks like The Weeknd.
They look like the biggest stars in the world.
They did, and I didn't expect that. That was so cool. There was a specific turning point. Now, the whole match was good, but there was a kick out about I don't know how far into the match, and the crowd just erupted and stood up. And after that, it was fire. The thumbtack spot, the Mexican Destroyer off the top rope, which is a benefit of the cage because you can use that to base yourself off of and do that spot.
True.
Where you can't necessarily as easily without it. There are so many wrestlers where the cage is a limitation. It constricts them. That is not the case for these guys. They're showing that it's not necessarily a power structure. It can be a high flyer structure before you even jump off the thing.
Yeah.
This was so special. The Young Bucks own Chicago. Every time they go to Chicago, something crazy happens. I mean, that's where the Bucks versus Omega and Page happened.
The ladder match happened in Chicago, right? Yeah.
The ladder match happened there. I'm sure there are so many more, but
even going back to the Ring of Honor days, I'm sure they had tons of Chicago classics. Yeah.
There are a few that are coming to mind, but I mean, they just completely own that city and just run everything. And
I feel like Chicago's got to be the number one wrestling city in the country at this point, right?
Right now,
I'm a New Jersey guy. I want it to be New York. I really badly do. Yeah. But come on, Chicago the last few years, that's the place to be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. They've killed it over and over again. But yeah, they had that ladder match there. The main event of All In was
with Ray in there, Ibushi in there.
Even though it was shortened and stuff, but they've worked there so often that it's just common for them. This was so special.
So special. The ending with the kids coming in, hugging them. I loved the visual of the Lucha Bros with the max rip, the blood coming over. It looked like they went through the war that they did to win those titles. And I don't see those titles leaving them anytime soon. I think they're going to run with them as champs for a while.
Yeah, I think you could get heat on them by switching it quick, but I mean, damn. Also, if I were AEW, I would quickly book them against Santana and Ortiz for Arthur Ashe. Get that there, and even if Santana and Ortiz lose, the crowd's going to be hot for it.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm right now. I'm in like a pickle. I have a commitment for the night of Arthur Ashe at like
Yeah,
7 or 8 p.m. And I'm like, I need to get there for at least the last half of that show
yeah.
because I feel like it's just going to be an incredible environment. What you referenced earlier, the Casino Battle Royale, Ruby Soho made her much anticipated debut, much rumored debut. I feel like it was almost a guarantee at this point when we
I
saw
mean,
all
I
the
reported
videos.
it. I reported it. So I'm just
Listen,
saying.
until it happens, blah, 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 blah. She eliminated Thunder Rosa last. They had such a creative finish on the apron. Sometimes the like apron spots where I'm gonna hit you and I'm holding onto the ropes and whoa gets a little
Yeah.
tired. I thought this was great. I really didn't know who was going to win because going into it, I was like, I could see Ruby coming in and Thunder Rosa still winning with the Britt Baker connection and whatnot. But I was really happy Ruby won. Her hugging Bryce and saying, "Hi, Bryce." Like everyone's been posting that GIF. It's heartwarming. Like you want Ruby to succeed, and so does everyone in the WWE because this was the moment that they all tweeted about the most. Like every wrestler that's ever worked with Ruby Riott or Ruby Soho is like, yeah, she was the fucking best, and we're nothing but happy for her.
She was almost in tears at the media scrum afterwards. And I had WWE wrestlers that were like, we were in tears.
Yeah.
Like, we were in tears over it happening. I really like this match. So I've talked to a lot of the women on the roster about this. Like battle royals are way more difficult for them than men biologically because they got to go over the top rope. Men are taller. It's easier to clothesline somebody, throw somebody over. The women a lot of times have to set up spots where they get tossed onto the apron and thrown out, or they're sitting on the top rope and get thrown out. So it's always great to see them getting creative with it. I wish there was an adjustment that could be made to make it easier for them to do these, but I mean, I mean that's a thing that I hear them mention a lot, but I don't see that on the horizon. But I loved this match because it displayed a lot of things. It forwarded the Big Swole Diamante feud that's happening on Dark. You get people like Kylan King and Sky Blue, who was so over in Chicago.
She was, yeah. The crowd had signs for her and everything. They were going wild, yeah.
That was great. You get Rebel in there as well. You get people like Layla Hirsch in there, but you also, as I mentioned, that Murderer's Row for Britt Baker. And the last two in that Battle Royal, Thunder Rosa and Ruby Soho are a part of that. AEW liked Thunder Rosa so much, they were like, we're not going to wait until your deal ends in 2022 with NWA. We're going to buy you out of that deal.
Yeah.
And that match is there. One day they will run that back. Greatest women's match in AEW history, one of the greatest women's matches of all time.
Agreed.
Ruby Soho's there now. They got Hikaru Shida that they can do a rematch with on Dynamite, Rampage anytime. But you got Anna Jay coming back.
Yep.
Too.
She's crowd went wild for her. She seemed super over. Yeah.
So you've got Dr. Britt Baker, this super over heel in the middle, and you've got a returning Anna Jay, super over. All these emerging talents. Hikaru Shida just waiting in the wings. Thunder Rosa as the runner-up with a ready-made rematch classic, and then you got Ruby Soho winning this. They have set Britt Baker up for success, and therefore the women's division up for success. I thought
what a turnaround for what people said about the women's division even months ago. I don't even want to say years ago. People months ago were like, yeah, AEW women's division still a bit thin. Not anymore.
No.
And this is a stacked division.
They do need to highlight them more. They built this battle royal really well. It was all over the place. I mean, I haven't even mentioned Jade Cargill, who's a future star. Nyla Rose is a former champion. Like Abaddon got a huge pop, and she's only on Dark. And she always wins.
Her look is phenomenal, though. I was watching with someone that had never watched AEW before, and when she came out, it was like, whoa, who is that? What is that? Yeah.
So, I do think they need to highlight the women more. Get Thunder Rosa and Hikaru Shida on Dynamite and Rampage more. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing 3 women's matches on Rampage and Dynamite combined every week and building this division. Just make them matter. Make people care about them.
I couldn't agree more. And the crowds, like you said, want them to succeed so much that there's not as much of a risk as there is in WWE of doing something like that and trying to build a new division like that and getting people to care.
Also, how rad was it that Ruby got to use that Ruby Soho song, which, I mean, you kind of figured that she would because she did one interview after her release. And it was
with the singer, right?
Yes, it was the Wrestling Perspective podcast with Lars of Rancid. Yeah. So I get the feeling, just a theory, I'm sure he was like, hey, come do my show and I'll let you.
Which what a trade-off. Like that's
Yeah.
it's been stuck in my head since the night. Such a great wrestling entrance theme and such a great wrestling name. Ruby Soho is amazing.
And that's what she originally based the Ruby Riot name off of, was the Ruby Soho song. And it's a 26-year-old song that sounds like it was written for her. Like the vibe, the tone, everything. It was perfect.
And shout out to her video. I know there's been much made of like people making prison escape videos and how that's become such a trope at this point. She went the complete opposite way. She went super creative. If you get released from WWE in the future, hit up the people that made her video.
Giancarlo.
Let's talk about it.
Same one that I think he made all of Joey Janela's in the past. Like
that makes a lot of sense. Joey Janela always had great ones. Burying the VHS tapes, like uncovering that shit. That was always great.
Yeah, Giancarlo killed it. There's some good teams out there making these videos. So, and it's such a good way to create buzz.
Such a great way to create buzz. I want more of it in wrestling. Like seeing the Ruby Soho character, even in those little snippets, gave me a sense of who she is, what her personality is like. I want that for more characters. I feel like it'd be smart of AEW to even invest in that and give us one segment like that for one character per show. I'd watch a minute of Darby skating around New York City for the Arthur
EC3's
Ashe show.
Running whole events based off of it. Like his team runs Free the Narrative, and like it is all stuff like that.
I've seen some of that, yeah.
And when I watched it at first, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. It's different. And then I was like, wait, why is different bad? Different isn't bad.
And it variety.
Was like, it was a description of what the character was, what their motivation was, why they're here, why they would want to win or lose this match. And then you see that battle. I love that people are doing different stuff and using this. I mean, if Vince McMahon's going to say, we make movies, pal, then make some damn movies.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, think about the response that the Firefly Funhouse match and the Undertaker AJ Styles match got with the one WrestleMania where they were kind of forced to do that. Like, all right, now there's no restrictions. Why don't you go, or less restrictions? Why don't you go wild? Speaking about going wild, Chris Jericho and MJF went wild in going 20 minutes in this match, which I felt was a bit too long. Amazing entrance for MJF. Amazing troll job with the countdown. That was just chef's kiss. Rough entrance for Chris Jericho. I love Chris. He was getting a little too cocky with the sing-alongs, I think, for this one. And the guitar player, Fozzy, shout out to Fozzy, didn't really understand what was going on either. He couldn't keep up with the crowd. They couldn't keep up with him. Match went a little too long. The great pop-up powerbomb spot out of nowhere onto the apron. That was like the standout for me. As soon as they started the match over again, crowd was on fire for it. That's like what we needed to get to. Now, did the match have to be that long for the crowd to be that hot when the match got restarted? I don't know. I loved when they did it with, I think it was Hogan and, was it Hogan and Michaels or was it Hogan and Orton at SummerSlam where they did this foot on the ropes restart spot? And it always gets me. It's kind of a pro wrestling trope that I love. It's same with when someone's getting taken out on a stretcher and they throw someone out of the way and they're like, I'm getting back in the ring every time. I'm marking out. I'm like, let's go.
This was, I agree with you. I think it could have been about 5 minutes shorter. I don't necessarily know if I need to see Chris Jericho beating MJF for any reason. MJF is such a star, but the entrance, so live, it started and I was like, oh, cool. And then the crowd was like, oh, we don't know all the words to this song.
Yeah.
And there are so many times you hear people say, oh, well, MJF should have came out to Cult of Personality before Punk and trolled people. And they say that about so many different songs. The Chris Jericho Countdown was never one of them that I saw pitched. So when he did it, it's like, oh my gosh, what's Jericho doing? Because in these Labors of Jericho, he played homage to a lot of his old stuff. And then it's him. That was magnificent.
And the King's robe too, such good gear on him as well.
Yes. And that pop-up powerbomb spot, so he countered that top rope Hurricane Rana from Jericho, and I was like, oh no, what's happening? Like I thought something went wrong at first, but it was just a beautifully executed spot. MJF, this is a way to protect him by beating him because he does not lose. Well, he doesn't wrestle that much, but he doesn't lose because you don't want him to lose. But at this point, it's like he was going to have to probably be in the title picture soon otherwise. Yeah, because he doesn't lose. But again, he doesn't wrestle. So I don't know where that issue would come up. So I think I'm conflicted on the result, but I enjoyed the match. But I do agree. I don't know if it needed to be 20 minutes long. Like 15, 14 could have worked real well.
I think it's the longest match on the show. Like, or no, the main event.
There were a few more. Because the battle royal's got to be longer because of the 5-minute intervals.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. But I don't know how I felt about the finish either. I was kind of like going into the match, I was explaining storylines to my girlfriend. And I was like, see, this one, I don't really know what's going to happen because Jericho's probably going to win because he's not going to retire, but he really shouldn't. So they're going to have to like figure something out for this. They figured it out with a dusty finish. What do you think is next for Jericho? And then what do you think is next for MJF?
I would like to see MJF go after Eddie Kingston. I think that would
I like that a lot.
I think that would be really good. You want to talk about two guys from different sides of the tracks there?
From New York, yeah.
MJF lost, Eddie Kingston lost, but they are two people that everyone will care about what they're doing. So why not go there? But I would like to see maybe the Pinnacle do something since they won a match or they competed in a match against the Inner Circle, and the Inner Circle didn't have to break up and they just hadn't been seen together since. So I would like to see the Pinnacle do something.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Jericho, again, I like him. I just don't know what his place is right now in AEW.
That's why I think they should have broken up the Inner Circle. What they haven't done anything together since Double or Nothing.
Yeah. And like,
I mean, Hager's barely around.
Jericho feuding with the Inner Circle even super appealing right now? Like, I don't know if I want to see that taking up time on an AEW show. Is Jericho versus Jake Hager? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not super into that.
I don't see that.
Up next, this is the one that everyone in Chicago is there for, I think. CM Punk makes his return to the ring against Darby Allin. He comes out in the Long Boys. I was like, is CM Punk going to come out in his Money in the Bank gear? I thought he was just going to come out in the, Chicago colored. He did have Chicago colors. Some people were comparing this to Shawn Michaels returning in the UPS gear. And I want to say, no. That was horrible. That was like, you looked at it and you're like, that's putrid. He had that horrible haircut too.
Yes.
It was weird seeing Punk in the Long Boys, but I got used to it by the end of the match. I could get used to it going forward. I thought they were fine.
Yeah, it was a reinvention for him. He doesn't want to come out looking exactly like he did before. He would always reinvent himself. Like
exactly. The mask for Straight Edge Society, the long hair, the short hair. Exactly.
Yeah. He would change that stuff up pretty often. He looked lean, and that's one of the benefits of being in AEW. You don't have to try to make yourself a balloon of a wrestler to fit in. Some athletes are just better off leaner than others. When Anderson Silva was knocking people dead, I didn't see a lot of people saying, he doesn't look like he could beat you up.
Yeah. Now, it's tough when Punk has the UFC career, and it's like maybe he can't beat you up. Of course,
yes. See, that's one of the unique situations where the lack of experience is like no experience might have been better than some experience, but also realistically, I'm like, even though CM Punk was just miserable in MMA, he could physically beat up like 90% of humans because he's trained with pro fighters for so long.
Absolutely.
But he looked lean. He looked good. I liked the tights because it signified something different. I think a lot of people have a misconception that Punk wrestled this like torrid pace outside of WWE or something. And Brian did too. I had a lot of people were like, oh, Bryan Danielson, will he be able to do AEW style for very long? And I'm like, man, his WWE style was more fast-paced than his Ring of Honor style. It was a very grounded technical base for a long time. And that's what we saw here. I thought it was a nice contrast, but you could tell the crowd was waiting for it to heat up, and it did. This was, to me, a very WWE style match, but Punk is so good at that and making it his own. Like the GTS to sending Darby outside, then you mix
so
in.
Good. And the way Darby sold that, the way he took the bump, it was like he literally got ragdolled, and it was like ragdoll physics out the ring, where they did that spot in the Money in the Bank match, and I think Cena takes it and he just like rolls out. The difference is I would love someone to put them side by side, like one person that has to care about their body and one person that's Darby Allin and throws caution to the wind.
And you always have those people that are like, oh, Darby's career will end soon. Well, you know what? I heard that about the TLC guys. And who are the two not wrestling now? The two that aren't wrestling now are the bases, Bubba Ray and Devon.
You're right.
All four of the others are still in the ring. I like this match a lot. This is one of those situations where you can do less is more because the crowd's going to be there for it.
Yep.
And they spaced out some of the big spots to where you can make this a 16, 17-minute match, but then something important happens like once every 90 seconds to 2 minutes after like the 5-minute mark, and it really stretched it out and made it good. I wasn't convinced that Punk was going to win.
Neither was I, especially when it wasn't the main event. When it's not the main event, you're like,
yeah.
and there's a story to be told there. I mean, I saw debates saying like, was it the right move to put Punk over there? Because you could put Darby over when more eyes are on this than ever before, and Punk has the built-in story of like,
Yes.
well, I got to get back to the top. Then I'm coming into this rusty. And do you think it's the right move to put him over?
Yeah, I do.
I think in Chicago, right, it could have killed the crowd if he lost.
Yes, I think it is. It's better to err on the side of caution than go with Darby, and Darby's going to be over no matter what.
Yep.
And Darby is the type of guy that can play off of, I can't believe I lost to this guy. He's good, but I know I'm better type of thing.
And the finish, I compared to WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels doing the moonsault, getting caught. Yeah. Darby, it felt like he just got caught. You know, he was in control, and then quick finish, GTS, and he's out. He could claim, I made one little mistake, and I can get back at you.
My favorite spot was CM Punk in his first match back, turning into the crafty veteran.
Exactly.
He turned into Ed Harris from Major League with Crisco on his shoulder and snot on the baseball. He's throwing everything he can, and Darby does that coffin drop, and Punk just sits up.
Yep.
And laughs. Oh, that was so magnificent. It was shot well. I loved it so much.
The way they booked this match was really so smart. And I assume some of it had to be based on Punk being like, I don't want to be blown up. Like, let's book this match in a way where I'm not going to look bad out there. And Darby bumped his ass off, took the wild spots. Punk took the suicide dive that he said he didn't want to take.
Steve Muehlhausen at the scrum was like, well, Punk, you got blown up out there, didn't you? And Punk's like, did I? And Steve's like, well, if I'm being honest.
Oh my God, he said that?
Yes. I was like, oh no, sorry to cut you off. I was just like, I remembered it and I was like, oh my God. And
no, that's crazy.
You can tell Punk is like, I'm going to be dealing with this shit for a while.
The only thing, and I love Punk, he's on my Mount Rushmore of personal favorite wrestlers. I was 12 when he cut the pipe bomb. It's like, he's up there. Oh my God, Punk, stop calling the spots in the ring. Was that obvious from your seat? Because it was super obvious on TV.
Because I remember when he had long hair, how it would look all the time. His face would go down and his hair would go straight down. Now there's no hair.
Yeah.
And so he just keeps on doing that. Like, just pretend you're talking trash.
It was probably 5 minutes into the match, and I'm thinking to myself, did they not call any of this in the back? Is he calling all of this in the ring right now? What's going on?
There was this guy I worked with when I would do independent wrestling, and I wrestled on this show, and I saw him putting his match together. And he never made it big, but I loved his way of calling a match because he was a heel. And he would just back somebody into the ropes and he'd go, I'm going to big boot you, you piece of shit. So he would call the match by talking trash to the other person. I'm like, I would love to see somebody do that.
That's so fucking funny. When we did the WWE warehouse tour and Triple H and Stephanie showed up, he was telling us they were filming something about the Ruthless Aggression era, and they were talking about the Elimination Chamber. And he was talking about how Rob Van Dam crushed his windpipe in that match with the 5-star off the Chamber. And he couldn't call any spots to Shawn, but they hadn't called the finish yet. So when it was just those two, he said he was calling all of his spots to the ref, and the ref would walk over to Shawn and tell him the spots.
Yep.
And he said it was like calling pitches to a catcher, because sometimes the ref would walk back and be like, Shawn says no. And he said, what do you mean no? That's the spot I just called. So that was like one of the funniest little anecdotes he told us, that we were like, oh God, that's fucking hysterical. Shawn just being like, nope, not taking that spot, dude.
That is amazing.
Our friends at HelloFresh are back. I am so happy to have them back. You guys know, if you follow me on Instagram, I was a huge fan of HelloFresh, still am. Making the meals, cooking the meals, it's so easy. They give you the instructions. They give you all of the pre-measured ingredients so that you don't have anything left over at the end of the meal. And the meals are restaurant quality without sacrificing the price. It really is true. Getting HelloFresh meals is actually 30% cheaper than shopping at your local grocery store. It's like 80% cheaper than going to a restaurant. It's crazy. And like I said, the meals are actual restaurant quality, so you don't sacrifice any of that. These are delicious. If you go to HelloFresh.com/14Robbie, that's 14ROBBIE at HelloFresh.com, you will receive 14 free meals and free shipping on your HelloFresh order. This is America's #1 meal kit. It's America's #1 meal kit for a reason. HelloFresh is the best in the business, and you're going to want to try this out. And what better time to try it than when I'm giving you 14 free meals? It's crazy. You get two meals a week. I'm feeding you guys for 7 weeks. It's Pretty damn good. Come on, you gotta admit, pretty damn good. HelloFresh.com/14Robbie. Get your 14 free meals and free shipping on me. Now let's get back into the show. Up next, Tall Paul.
The main event.
Tall Paul versus QT Marshall. I think I heard some little smatterings in the crowd of Tall Paul.
So let me.
Did I hear any?
For those that aren't educated, I tried to get chants of Tall Paul,
which is great for the big show. No more BS. Tall Paul.
He loved it. He followed me on Twitter. He put it over, all that stuff.
Have you interviewed him before?
I haven't, and I want to.
He's awesome. He's legit awesome. The way he thinks about the business is legit. Like, he's one of those really smart minds.
Waiting for AEW to hit me up when I message them every month and say, hey, give me an interview, and they never reply. But
it's because of the CM Punk news. You're sneaky blackballed.
Well, I mean, it was well before that, but that's neither here nor there. Paul White, I got to take issue with him.
Ooh. Because
the chants were starting multiple times. There were 3 signs in the crowd for Tall Paul, and they were starting to go Tall Paul.
Would he?
Yes. He shushed him twice.
Fuck. To do a chop or something.
And I don't think that he knew the chants were starting. It was complete coincidence, and that would shut him up. And I was like, no, because I can't start him in the media section. That's frowned upon. I can be like, yeah.
You should have gone rogue. You should have been like, if you throw me out now, I don't care. It's the main event.
Yeah, it was the main event.
This went 3 minutes, probably 2 minutes longer than it had to, but it was what it needed to be, right?
When did Adam Cole ever main event a WrestleMania? Never.
Tall Paul did.
He did, and he won this match. He should have won this match.
Yeah.
It should have been even shorter than what it was.
Yeah,
it should have been a wrecking crew. Like, not even a little bit. This should have been like a minute and a half. He beats the hell out of everybody.
Gave everyone a bathroom break, I guess, before the main event. Seeing him pick people up like from the ringside area to the ring, always fun live. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot. He's a monster. He's a massive person. I was at No Way Out. I think it was No Way Out 2012 where he main evented against Cena in a steel cage match. I was like, if Cena won, Laurinaitis was gone. That match is a weird, people have different experiences. The people that were in the arena for that match look at it like it was a 5-star classic, myself included. Like, it was the most fun live match. And then you watch it back and you're like, that was a Big Show John Cena steel cage match. It's exactly what you thought it would be. The people that were there, I've talked to multiple people that were in the building. They were like, that was the greatest match you've ever seen, wasn't it? I was like, but it was really good.
Yeah, I think there is a place somewhere for Paul White and Mark Henry to be like AEW's APA, where they just come out and they murder people that need to be off TV, and they don't wrestle very often.
I like that.
Like, they just a punch, world's strongest slam, choke slam, and get them out of here. And they would get over doing that. Like the 911 from ECW type of thing.
Yeah,
that would work. But I don't need to see him wrestle that much.
On this card, I don't know if that's the place for him.
Hope that AEW puts out a Captain Insano figure. That'd be cool. But yeah.
In the main event, Kenny Omega defeated Christian, 21 minutes, 19 seconds. A bit too long, I thought, but a good match. I enjoyed it. There were some people on Twitter were shitting on it, like, oh, the crowd's so dead for it, this, that, the next thing. I like Christian a lot. I don't know if I was just biased for it. I thought they worked their asses off in a very good, almost WWE-style main event match.
It's obviously not what they had planned. The plan was for Hangman, but he asked for time off. Tony Khan confirmed that to me. He wanted time off for the birth of his child. It's early on, it was very quiet. And I think it's because the audience knew Christian Cage was not going to win. Mm-hmm. This was a rematch. We had seen this match before. And in AEW, it's not usually the case, but there were stakes to it, but everybody knew something was happening afterwards. Christian Cage at this age, I feel lucky that I get to see him wrestle, and he's in the shape that he's in. And that's
the table spot he took on the ribs where it cut him. Holy fuck, that looked bad. And the finish, very scary when they're setting it up, but Kenny hit it perfectly. It was, pretty flawless. He
hit it perfect. I liked the match, but this was a means to an end. And to me, Christian Cage, if you look at his AEW run and people are like, oh, well, he should have went to WWE, he would have had a great WWE run because he would have been booked at the top for sure.
Yeah,
he would have been. He would have had a feud with Roman and probably Edge, something like that. So it was creatively satisfying options for him. But he's gone to AEW. He won a bunch of matches. He won the Impact title. He got to return to Impact, and he main evented a pay-per-view. That's already pretty good. And if he wants to go back to WWE, whether it's in a year or 3 years, they're going to hire him because they don't care how old he is. And he'll get to do all this stuff. So I think it was a good call for him, and I liked it. And nothing else happened after this.
Nope, that was it. The show faded to black, and thank you for joining me on the podcast. We'll have to get you back on sometime. No, obviously, Kenny cuts the promo afterwards. I'm getting so excited. I'm videotaping my TV saying, here comes my guy, Daniel Bryan Danielson, whatever fuck you want to call him now. He's coming out.
I've been accidentally calling him Daniel Bryanson for like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, someone called him Daniel at the presser, and he had a great response. He was like, "Daniel, what?"
He pretended he was mad. Tony accidentally said Ruby Riott, and he goes, "That won't happen again. I'm sorry, that'll never happen again. That will never happen again."
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, we get Adam Cole first, which was shocking. He walked out of the heel tunnel, which nobody noticed at first.
Oh.
And he gives a super kick to Jungle Boy, joining the Elite, aligning himself back with the Young Bucks. Kenny Omega. I don't know why Hangman just came to mind because he was back in being the Elite days, I guess. Unbelievable. And then, of course, we get Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon. He's back. Clears the ring, baby faces end the show, the crowd goes home happy. If you were there live, you got a post-match speech from Bryan Danielson. That was amazing, worth looking up on YouTube because it's completely different than the, I'm angry about where I used to work, and now that I'm here, I finally get an opportunity. He's like, nope, I love where I used to work, and I still came here. There was a lot more to this place than it was the last place, kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. Was that the craziest, I don't know, like it was 5-minute stretch you've ever experienced at a wrestling show?
It's the most insane I've ever seen on a wrestling show, period, ever.
I believe
Without a doubt. Like earlier in the night, I said, man, was that Lucha Brothers kick out the loudest reaction I've ever heard live? And I was just at a stadium where the place came unglued for Becky Lynch coming back.
Yeah.
And for Brock Lesnar coming back. Those were very loud. Like, now, granted, I didn't do a ton of traveling before, but like my experiences were limited to Matt Brown knocking out Eric Silva in front of his hometown crowd. That was loud. Aroldis Chapman coming back after taking a line drive off the face. That was loud. Like, so to my localized area, I was limited. But over the last 2 years, I've been to most of these major shows. I've never heard anything like that live. And when I listened to it back, and I was like, that's the craziest thing I've ever been witness to in wrestling, because everybody just knew Bryan Danielson was coming out, but they swerved and they're like, here's Adam Cole. And everybody's like, well, is this going to be it? And then when he joined, people were like, there's no way that's it. Everybody knew he was coming out and they were ready. The Flight of the Valkyries, I understand why they did it and made it their own. They ain't got to pay a bunch of money for it. They can just produce their own song. Adam Cole's song ruled. Him being a part of the Elite, oh boy, it adds a fresh coat of paint to it.
You're going to redo the Kenny and Adam story in AEW now, which is like, yes, please give that to us.
And what nobody's talking about, nobody is saying, where does Hangman Page fit into this? Where does one of the most over people in wrestling? And nobody is also saying, where did Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa and Switchblade Jay White, who have been very transparent about this stuff, where do they fit into this?
Yeah.
There are so many facets, so many different roads you can take. You just throw away the map, travel one of them, turn back around, go down the next one. This is one of the most interesting times of a wrestling program I've ever seen in my life.
When did you know that Bryan was going to make the jump to AEW? Not necessarily appear at this show, but that Bryan was leaving the WWE and actually signing with AEW.
Okay, so bodyslam.net, I want to give them credit. They reported it. I had heard it that day, but that was the same day I broke the Punk news.
Oh, wow. So I thought maybe it would have been like earlier in the months between him leaving WWE and AEW. Like this was a more recent deal, probably.
Well, I don't know. I don't know when they worked it out, but that's when I heard for sure. Because when I reported the Punk thing, I had somebody from AEW say, well, I feel very comfortable now telling you that Daniel Bryan's here and he's going to debut at Arthur Ashe. That's why I booked Arthur Ashe and I'm going there. Then they changed it. Or at least that person said they changed it. And Body Slam reported it that night. So I knew then. I heard a couple weeks later that it was going to be All Out, because I said, yeah, I was afraid I was going to get blackballed for the Punk thing. And this person said, no, you'd probably get blackballed if you reported that Daniel Bryan was going to debut at All Out. And I was like, what? And then Body Slam put that out there too. They did very good on that story. I want to shout out them because they're doing great work. But that's when, like, basically the day that both of those were reported that was happening, or that he was coming in, is when I heard. But I had heard about him appearing at All Out probably about a week before that. It's just the Adam Cole thing.
Yeah, did you know Adam Cole would be there, like, day of?
Yes, I knew Friday that Adam Cole was going to be at All Out. I could not get a confirmation on it.
So by the end of the show, when Kenny wins, there's got to be part of your brain thinking, like, maybe not?
Yes.
Or is part of you still like, no, he'll come out?
I was thinking, okay, well, they spread it out. They spread out, and they're going to do Cole this week or something. But I had people telling me Friday, Adam Cole is debuting at All Out, and I tried to exhaust my sources there. But nobody, like, the only people that knew for sure were the people involved with the segment. And obviously a dentist on the roster probably knew about it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even official until Sunday. He signed the deal Sunday.
Wow.
Nobody in WWE really knew. They had an idea, because if you heard, they posted or they sent out a memo early in the week. He's no longer with the company. I think that was their way of getting ahead of it without posting on their website, Adam Cole has left WWE. We wish him the best.
Yep.
Because that would be underhanded. They don't want that publicity. So I knew Friday, but then I heard that there were some people that needed to know that heard well over a week ago, and that AEW was pretty confident he was coming in before his contract even expired, and they could even legally talk to him. So,
wow. Did you hear anything about a WWE reaction to the show, or what went down at All Out? Anything from that end of, shit, here we are. Everyone's, saying that the tide has turned, as New York Post put it. Like, what did they think of the show? What did people at WWE respond to it like?
Vince McMahon said, we're going to show them how it's done tonight. They want to return. We're going to give them Drake fucking Maverick. That's exactly what happened. But when I talk, okay, so the wrestlers I talk to, they're all happy. They're
of course.
This is good for wrestling, good for the gooses, good for the gander, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And they were happy for their friends.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes Bryan Danielson. Everybody likes Ruby Soho. Everybody likes Adam Cole. Everybody fears Minoru Suzuki. So they were all very, very happy about it. Like, the officials I talked to are like, they put on a good show. Like, what can you say? Like, there wasn't a lot of like snide hating stuff. And sometimes that'll come through, but there wasn't. It was just kind of one of those shows that was so undeniable. It's like, you did good. But part of me thought it was almost like when Kat Zingano got beat by Ronda Rousey, and it's like, she did good, guys. She did good. She got me. She got me. I like, part of it had me feeling like it was like that, but it's like, what else are you going to say? Overrated? No. I mean,
yeah,
they know that AEW hit a home run Sunday. At least the people I talked to did.
And as far as AEW goes, they've got Bryan, they've got Punk, they've got Cole. Rumors are that there's more surprises coming, more signings coming in the next couple of months. What do you think this does for the business? We've seen the people making the outsiders comments, the responses like that. People saying maybe it's bigger. Do you think that's crazy? Do you think the comparisons are warranted? What does this do for AEW? Does it catapult it to a next level?
I don't think it's crazy. Now, I think a lot of people misremember what Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were in WWE and how long they'd been around. Were any of the three as big as Hogan at that point? Even though Hogan was well past his prime, no. I think Hogan, I mean, we're talking biggest wrestling star of all time at that point. However, Scott Hall had been in WWF for 3 years and was an intercontinental champion, a very over one. But
was Razor only in the WWF for 3 years?
3 or 4 years. He went in 92, he left in 96. Exactly.
That is nuts.
Nash was there for about 3. He was a year-long WWF champion. He was great. He headlined a he didn't headline a WrestleMania.
No.
He was co-main under Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah,
but he was big. But look at CM Punk.
They had Pam Anderson involved in their match, though. Kind of sick.
Yes. Bryan Danielson main evented multiple WrestleManias as a babyface, and WWE can't book baby faces.
Yeah.
CM Punk was the biggest, the most over person on their show at times. He single-handedly got WWE mainstream exposure in 2011 when they badly wanted it. Adam Cole is completely different. He is a well-booked, I don't want to say underground star, but he hadn't been on Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
But you look at that, I think that is as big as Hall and Nash for sure. Hogan's hard to replicate, but I think it's very good. This, as cool as it was seeing like Christian Cage and Booker T and Mick Foley hop over to TNA in the 2000s, like one a year, it seemed like. These are people who are still in their physical primes or not far removed from it in Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, and Punk hasn't wrestled in a long time, so we'll see. But I think it's very, very good for wrestling, and they've got another hour to pad out on Fridays, and I've been critical the last couple of weeks saying it made both shows kind of thin. Well, let me tell you, I'm not to date this podcast, but I'm excited to go to AEW and Rampage in Cincinnati this week. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, I can't wait to sit through 3 hours of wrestling.
So you obviously, I think, are with me in that when people say that AEW has a problem in signing too many former WWE guys, you kind of roll your eyes at that, right? Because what does that even mean? Like, a lot of these former WWE guys, like you said, are in your prime, and we're also in a time in the business where WWE hoarded a lot of talent and then released a lot of talent. So you're just supposed to like not sign any of the good talent that is right there for you to sign?
Undertaker came from WCW. Steve Austin came from WCW.
There you go.
There's so much. I mean, Savage, Hogan, Bret Hart all came from WWF and went over to WCW. Acquisitions happen. People change. They find out what's better for them. They move along. I mean, look, there's so many people that just had better runs elsewhere. Jeff Jarrett, wasn't going to be a top guy in WWF. He went to WCW, arguably in one of the worst periods, but he forever became a top guy after that. Like,
what is he, a 14-time world champion or something ridiculous like that? He's on all the graphics with like all the greats.
look at Sid. Sid would hop back and forth whenever it was convenient for him, and it worked out. Like, it just who cares? Who cares if it's about happiness and good creative satisfaction for the viewer and the consumer. Like, you know what? If WWE's selling snakes and sparklers, let AEW sell some whistling bungholes or something. Like let them do something different if they want to. I'm cool with it.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you. I appreciate the time being around. Bray, you said you don't see him signing with AEW. He's got like 2 more months. Is that something that you feel because there's not interest on his part, not interest on AEW's part? There is more interest elsewhere. Why do you feel like that?
Well, I should clarify that tweet. It got a lot more traction than I thought. I wouldn't say that because I don't know that if that information is out there presently, that it would have come from Bray Wyatt himself, because I have made efforts to reach out to Bray Wyatt, and while very cordial, that camp is very private, and I mean very, very private. So that's something that I don't.
That's just your assumption, you would say?
Yeah. I don't think it's a slam dunk that he goes to AEW, because I don't know that what he had done in WWE, this most recent body of work, is something that would be spectacularly embraced in AEW. Now, the stuff he was doing in 2013, 2014, 2015 with the Wyatt family, creepy backwoods guys, I do think that would work very, very well. So I just don't think it's a certainty. I don't think it's a slam dunk that he goes there. I hope that he does in some capacity, because he's a very good creative guy, but that's certainly not a definite. If it were a definite, it's something I'd put in a report, but I gotta be a little more careful about my tweets. Apparently, your
tweets, though, I will say, you have the power, and you did it earlier. You tweet an eyeballs emoji, and you can get the world just going after whatever. And the final question I have for you is a fun one. I know you're a wrestling toy collector.
Yeah.
What would be your holy grail? If I said, Sean Ross Sapp, I could get you any wrestling action figure, toy, whatever it is, whatever the price may be, mint condition, what is it?
So I started to collect last year during the pandemic because I got depressed, and I was like, I'm going to familiarize myself with some stuff I liked when I was younger, like stuff that made me happy. And the last things I collected were Jack's Bone Crunchers.
Oh, and I
love how hideous they are. It's before face scans, so they had to hand make them.
Yeah.
And on the other end, I collect ECW figures from that same era because they're beautiful. They're really, really good. I've got almost every Jack's BCA there is. I collect AEW Unrivaled.
The ones you're talking about are the ones where they like crack,
Rubbery.
right?
Yes, they crack.
So I had I had two of those. I had Hulk Hogan and I had Jericho, both around like WrestleMania 19, right? If I
Yes.
recall correctly. Yeah. Those I actually loved those as a kid.
Yeah. So I loved them. They were very easy to play with and all that stuff. So I'm trying to think of one that's like super rare that I don't have because I've got so many of them. But like they made any excuse to release a Steve Austin figure back then. They're like, let's paint some jeans on them. Let's do this. Let's do that. So like right now, the one that I'm after like just a straight up Jax BCA Brock Lesnar. But they've got like these prototypes out there and like unpainted prototypes and stuff. Some of those are like ones where I'm like, I can't spend that much money on an action figure. I started to collect these because they're cheap. So probably one of those, but I'm after so many different ECW figures right now. The one that would be the biggest would be a New Jack figure.
Oh, nice.
They had a New Jack figure that had a noose.
Oh my God.
He would hang people, man.
Yeah.
He would just hang people. And they released one without the noose that people didn't even know for sure was a thing until a few years ago. I would love to find that one. It's a variant, but I would.
That's what I was looking for out of you. A weird ECW action figure response. I asked when I was there for SummerSlam, I asked both Sheamus and Matt Riddle if they would wrestle New Jack. Both of them were like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'd kick New Jack's fucking ass. I was like, all right. I said to Sheamus, I said, what if he stabbed you? He said, I'd stab him right back. I was like, all right, amazing. Fucking A.
It's amazing. And Cardona and Myers talked about it on their podcast. That figure, so it drove the demand up. Like
there you go. Yeah,
they utter something and it becomes. I mean, I started to collect ECW figures because I saw a Taz one on their show, and I go, "That's the raddest figure I've ever seen in my life." So that makes it even harder, and it's not something I'm actively pursuing. But that's the one where I'd be like, "All right, I'd spend a little money on that just to have it."
If you saw it at a con, yeah. If you saw it in a bin, and it was like, whoa, this is special. All right, Sean, thank you so much for coming on, doing the All Out recap show. This is, like I said on Twitter, a long time coming. I can't believe we haven't sat down and done this before. And if you're looking for the best wrestling news, the most updated wrestling news, Fightful Select is well worth your subscription. Tell everyone where they could find you, where they could find Fightful, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sean Ross Sapp. Fightful has a bunch of Twitter handles, but we have Fightful.com. We cover pro wrestling primarily, but we also cover MMA and boxing as well. We do live watch-alongs on the huge fight nights and stuff like that. But FightfulSelect.com, dare I say, we break more wrestling news over there than anywhere. And it's not just big stories. Like, if I find out minute details about stuff that interests me, I'm going to pass that along. And some people are like, oh, well, that's not a big story. Why'd you put it out there? Because I wanted to, because I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. So we're doing that every day. There's exclusive news there every single day. And beyond that, we have 7 shows a week. We have additional reviews.
Great
Q&A
crew.
shows.
I love the Fightful crew.
Oh,
all
great.
of you guys, yeah.
They're great. Like, I wanted some people with personality because I'm covering fake wrestling. Like, I didn't want to be like so many other people were. They can do their thing. We're going to do ours. But it's $5 a month, and it really supports us. And
Fightful's fun. There's hints of Barstool in it. The way you guys write headlines, the fun headlines. Like, I feel like if you're listening to this, if you're a stoolie who hasn't checked out Fightful before, I think you will like it. I think it's an easy jump. If you're a wrestling fan, it's a must subscribe to Fightful Select.
And I mean, my God, we knew each other before we were internet famous, Robbie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, a long time, Sean.
There were a lot of people that were like, you doing Barstool? And I'm like, I've known Robbie for years. My God, man.
I love it. Thank you, Sean. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.